Hi, I'm Mark Ryan with Easy 8A, and I love talking about everything and anything 8A related. Today I'm going to talk about the Ostensible Subcontractor Rule. This regulation change happened a couple months ago in May, I think May 30th of 2023, and I've been getting a lot of questions from clients about it. So let me get into the details. So this rule, and anytime you're dealing with small business, the the federal government requires that you're a small business and you can't be affiliated with another firm or you exceed that size standard. So, whether you're 8A or you're veteran small business, woman-owned small business, you have to be a small business. And, for your NAICS code, you can look up what that size standard is. For most companies, that's a monetary, total revenue size standard. And, for contractors, for example, general contracting right now is at 40 million. I have a lot of contractors doing IT work, which is 541, 511, 12. Those are at 34 million. So you have to be below that on a 5-year average of your revenue. Usually when you're dealing with an affiliation, you're looking at things like common ownership or common management, as long as it's not an ANC or a tribally owned company. And that's what causes the affiliation. And then, when the SBA determines you're affiliated, they add your revenue to your affiliated firm's revenue, and they make sure that the combination of the two is still below that 40 million or 34 million, whatever it is for your NAICS code. Or if it's an employee head count, same thing, your employees plus the other company's employees, make sure you're below that threshold. Well, the Ostensible Subcontractor Rule really gets into how you deal with that in a prime-sub relationship. And basically what the rule is saying is that the prime and sub will be treated as one and the same in certain situations. So they'll be combining the revenue or combining the employee count, making sure that you're still a small business if you fall under this rule. So to define the rule, there are 3 factors that they're looking at. The first one is whether or not you, as the prime, and your sub are similarly situated. So are you both 8A and it was an 8A contract? Are you both small business and it was a small business set aside? In the case where you are both similarly situated, or both small, or both veteran owned, then the rule doesn't apply. Second, they're looking at whether the primary and vital requirements of the contract are being performed by the prime or the sub. If they're being performed by the sub, then the rule kicks into effect. And 3, that they are not unusually relied upon by the prime, meaning that the prime isn't heavily reliant on the sub. So now I want to look at that second and third requirement in a lot more detail. So first I'll jump into that second requirement of being primary and vital. So what does that mean? Who's performing the primary and vital parts of the contract? And that's required to be the prime. So basically the SBA is looking at the requirements associated with the principal purpose of the acquisition. The principal purpose of the acquisitions. So basically, as a prime, you need to make sure you're doing the principal purposes. And they give a nice example in there about doing an herbicide contract. And they basically say, if you're not the one putting the herbicide down, you're not doing the principal purpose of it. You can't just be managing it. They further give an example with construction, and they really spend a lot talking about construction. And that's a good point, because in general contracting, they do clarify that a general contractor is their primary and vital requirement, or their principal purpose, is to supervise and oversee the construction, to manage the contract, to manage the subs. They're not expecting a general contractor to be performing a majority of the construction. And they go on to clarify that in construction or general contracting, you still have to meet the limits on subcontracting. So, a company cannot come in and, let's say they do all the painting and that's 15% of the work, so they met that 15% limit on subcontracting, and then yet still had a sub that did the principal purpose of, supervising, oversee, management, that kind of thing. That would, again, not meet the requirement. In the 15% that a general contractor is doing, they must be doing that overseeing the management of the contract, subs, etc., the supervision. All right, and now I want to go into some detail on that third requirement, being unusually reliant upon your sub. They have come up with a factor-based analysis for that. In that analysis, they basically say that the prime has to possess the capabilities to perform on the contract. And in determining whether or not that sub is an ostensible subcontractor, they are going to look at all aspects of the relationship between the prime and the sub and apply 4 factors in looking at that. So I'll go over those 4 factors. And they do clarify that no single factor is determinative, but they're going to look at all 4. The first one is that the proposed subcontractor is the incumbent contractor and is ineligible to compete for the procurement. So, they're the prime, they've lost a cert, and they're now wanting to be a sub under you. That's going to be a factor. Second one is that the prime contractor plans to hire a large majority of its workforce from the sub. If you plan to do that, that's going to be a factor. The third factor is whether the prime contractor's proposed management previously served with the subcontractor, especially if that was on the incumbent contract. And the fourth factor is that the prime contractor lacks the relevant experience and has to rely on the subcontractor's experience to win the contract. And now looking all these, these 4 factors, the SBA still goes back and says it all comes down to who is performing the primary and vital requirements of the contract. So as long as you're doing that as the prime, you're usually in a good spot. They additionally clarify that they want primes to be able to bid on projects. They want them to be able to use the experience and past performance of their subcontractors to strengthen their offers, even if the subcontractor is an incumbent. So, any one of these is not determinative, and they repeat that quite a few times. They like to say that they look at all the factors. And they want to leave it up to their district offices to be able to assess these factors at their discretion and weigh all the factors that go into making these size determinations and applying this rule. And it doesn't always apply to all 4 factors. I know this is kind of getting confusing. They give us these factors and they say don't always use them. So they do give us some samples. I shouldn't say samples, some guidance that they want us to be taking into consideration when you're getting into a prime sub rule. So I'm going to go over the half dozen things real quick. First off, the prime contractor should lead the preparation of the proposal. Secondly, a team agreement should be on the prime's letterhead, never on the subs. The prime contractor should participate in the project and the site walkthrough. Don't be letting the sub do that. The prime should not lease or obtain all the equipment for the project from the sub. The prime should possess the same or more experience in that area as the sub. The prime should ensure that it would otherwise be eligible to receive the project without the subcontractor. And the prime should ensure that the amount of work that they plan to sub to the subcontractor is less than 40%. And finally, the prime contractor should not refer to the prime sub relationship as a team. Shouldn't be using that term. So they also give some guidance on the primary and vital requirements and the unusual reliance. So I'll go over those real quick. So they clarify that the prime, to be doing the primary and vital requirements, should be identifying the principal purpose of the solicitation, conducting the on-site management, and that the subcontractor is not precluding the prime from the management and the supervision of the subcontractor's work. Okay. Next, they clarify that if you are hiring personnel from the incumbent contractor, don't do it en masse. Do it individually. Unless you have some security clearance issue, each individual person should be reviewed and looked at. And finally, they give guidance that if hiring a large pool of personnel from an incumbent subcontractor, have a contingency plan for finding and hiring alternative personnel. All right, that's the update on Ostensible Subcontractor Rule from May of 2023. Thanks.